to the final session, which is a wrap up and a very, very critical session where we lay out the path forward, which will be shared by our knowledge partners, KPMG, whose whole team have worked immensely hard and partnered with all of us, and the whole country is deeply indebted to them and for spending their time voluntarily and adding their voice to the cause. So we will start by having KPMG share their thoughts. And on behalf of KPMG, we have Alap, who is a director with the KPMG's practice. I would request Alap to first introduce himself for 1 minute. It would be best if he introduces himself, highlighting about himself and the institution he represents. And then I request Alap to share the recommendations that they have evolved for the way forward on post discussion with the industry. Alap, all yours now, please. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ashish, and good evening, everybody who's joining us today. It's been a great eye-opener for everybody who's been part of this leadership conclave, and I would like to thank from KPMG, both Ministry of Tourism and Faith, for giving us this opportunity of being associated with this. I think everybody who's been part of this knowledge conclave has learned a lot, and we've been able to hear all the industry voices and, been able to understand what the industry wants. Also, we've had the government stakeholders also come forth and give their views on what the government thinks about this entire tourism landscape as we go forward. Just for introductions, for those of you who don't know, KPMG is one of the largest audit and consulting firms in India. So we are based across multiple locations in India. From a tourism standpoint, I represent a practice called Infrastructure, Government and Healthcare, which is working with almost 13 states across the country and the national government for tourism infrastructure development. I have been associated in the tourism domain for almost about 10 years now. I've had experiences across tourism PPP development strategy. I've been fortunate enough to lead most of the national programs that the tourism industry and ministry is running. And being from the hospitality industry myself, I've had the pleasure of understanding all sides of the coin. So having said that, I have a short presentation on what has been discussed and setting the context on our way forward. I'll just share my screen. Chatali, is the screen visible?
Yes, Alap, please carry on. Thank you.
All right. So the idea of this ITM 2021 is basically on the back of the disruption that has happened post-COVID. And the thought that we had is, can this disruptive growth for Incredible India be a reality in the future? So can this disruption actually propel our growth? So background of the entire ITM, for those of you who are not aware, the idea is to get overseas travel agents, tour operators, to get India-centric opinion and, get India-centric packages. And ITM has grown strength, from strength to strength year on year. Both Ministry of Tourism and Faith have come together and have planned this entire B2B conclave. And the good bit that has happened is that, this year we had not only the buyer-seller virtual meeting, virtual being the challenge that COVID poses to us, but also we had this entire leadership conclave, which brought about varied ideas from varied industries on how can tourism be taken forward. Now, from a travel and tourism overview perspective, we have to be very cognizant of the fact that from the year 1950 to today, till about 2019, before COVID hit us, we had, the international tourism industry has gone up by about 60%, about 60 times. So the ITAs across the globe have risen by 60 times. In the past 9 years, which have been a good year for as far as global economy is concerned, apart from the last 2-3 years, the travel and tourism GDP growth had outpaced the overall, economy growth of the world. So we do realize that travel and tourism is the next big industry as far as the entire globe is concerned. Unfortunately, all of us know last year, sometime about this time in February, coronavirus had become a very, very major reality in all of our lives. And I think it has changed the lives of everybody forever. So, be it our industry, be it any other industry, it has changed the world forever. Travel and tourism industry was unfortunately one of the first industries to be hit, and we believe that it will probably one of the last industries to recover globally. UNWTO had estimated a loss of about $1.1 trillion on the basis of COVID. So what we see, is that a 72% reduction between January and October, tourism was growing by about 4%. So it's taken us back to, it has taken us back by about 3 decades, this entire impact of COVID, which we believe is going to take about 2.5 to 4 years, where ITAs in international travel could come back to its old, normal, what we call as pre-COVID normal. What is also understanding to understand is that, that this is not the first time that something like this is happening. And the past is always a good predictor of how the world's going to pan out. So if we saw SARS, it took about 11 months to recover. September 11 attacks took about 14 months to recover. The global economic crisis also took about 19 months to recover. So we are seeing an impact which is much, much greater than the global economic crisis and recession. And therefore, we believe that the road to recovery will be about 2 to 3 years. Now, there are also green shoots. And the green shoot for us specifically is, of course, the domestic tourism. India constitutes the second largest domestic tourism market in the world. You would not see China on this map because China doesn't really capture data the way we do. But China being the largest and we being the second largest just by the size of the population that we have. So it is also important for us to understand that domestic tourism is going to be the key till the time in the next 2-3 years, the international tourism recovers. And that's exactly what our Honorable Prime Minister has also set forth. So, the Honorable Prime Minister pre-COVID on the 15th of August gave us this entire roadmap of visiting at least 15 tourist destinations before 2022, when we mark, of course, the 75th year of our freedom. So domestic tourism as an important sector has also been looked at by the industry leaders and by the Honorable Prime Minister himself. So now we come to the crux of it. We're looking at 2023 as the make or break year. So over the past 2 years since the national tourism policy came about, our international tourist arrivals have almost quadrupled. Can we try and look at and target where our international tourism arrivals go about 3 times from the current situation? And that is why we say that in this 2 to 3 year period of recovery, is it a golden opportunity for us? Because the world has gone into reset. Is it time that we use this reset for the benefit of pitching India as the global tourism leader and as the benchmark for global tourism, which is what the entire thought process was when we brought together the Knowledge Conclave. There are some things that work for India, some things that don't. As far as the cultural and business travel is concerned, especially if you look between the BRICS region, natural resources, price competitiveness, we score very high as far as the travel and tourism competitive index is concerned. Tourism service infrastructure, safety and hygiene, safety and security, health and hygiene, and ICT readiness are some of the areas where I think we have a lot of challenge. And when we went back and went through the industry's voice and whatever was discussed in all of these sessions that have happened in the past 3 days, we realized that most people were actually trying to talk about these things only. So we're very, very happy to know that the policymakers and the industry is very cognizant of the fact that these are the areas which are clearly the benchmark that we need to improve for us to become the global leaders as far as tourism is concerned in the year of 2023. Now, the road to recovery will also see select segments do better and select segments do slightly slower. So the early green shoots that we've already started to see is, smaller travel, travel between sub 500 kilometer, which can be done by your own vehicle, or business critical travel, manufacturing, and, construction and pharma kind of travel. So basically travel which was, which is very, very localized is going to take up very quickly. But as we've seen forward, in fact, February 10th was, I think, the day when the aviation numbers have gone back to pre-COVID times, and we've had record numbers of flights being taken. So I think India has been on the fast track as far as this recovery is concerned, again, buoyed by the domestic tourism and the strength of domestic tourism that we have. Goa, Uttarakhand, and Himachal are three states which have seen, despite a lockdown, very, very decent numbers in the last quarter of the year. So we are seeing the green shoots coming up, and the road to recovery, I think, is going to be fabulous as far as India is concerned. So the ITM Leadership Conclave was, the entire idea behind it was to find out what are the impetus which is needed. And we saw what was happening in the B2B platform. We saw what was happening in the Leadership Conclave, the industry dialogue, consultations, the outlook that came from the industry, the actual voice of industry that we heard. And we finally figured out that there are about 9 areas, 9 buzzwords, as we call it in consulting firms, which are actually going to be the key as far as the entire, context of this ITM Leadership Conclave goes. So first is, of course, promoting heritage, and India has one of the best heritage, both be it built heritage, be it from a cultural standpoint, and also be it from a natural standpoint. We have one of the best product to offer to the world. Advancing cooperation not only between the industry, multiple bodies of industry, but also between the state and center. Following and setting up of global standards so that we are competitive in the global market. As we've seen, security, hygiene, these are some of the challenges that we face. Boost investment and access to finance. Of course, the industry was very vocal about the fact that there is more and more requirement of industry to be given the much needed financial incentive to be competitive in this global scenario. Protecting our planet, ecotourism is an area that I'm sure all of us are very, very aware and cognizant of. Times like COVID have shown us that, reduced infrastructure, reduced stress on the planet from a human standpoint can help the entire nature heal. And, we had sighting of the Himalayas, for example, from Chandigarh. So these kind of things absolutely change the entire perspective of not only the industry at large, but globally. I think people have started to accept that protecting our planet is a very important thing. Fostering education and skill development is again a very, very key aspect. And, it goes along with the next thing that we said, which is empowering youth, because with such a large working population coming up, I think it's going to be more and more important, especially tourism being a labor intensive industry, for us to skill the upcoming generation to deliver on these, global standards. Making data-driven decisions again becomes a key aspect. I think we miss out on a lot of things because the data is not available for any one of us to make decisions which are, very, very pointed and very, very targeted. For that, I think the industry needs to come together and collect enough data to make the decisions which are more rooted in statistics than just generally guesstimates. And of course, reinvigorate India, the brand India. So we've been running the successful campaign of Incredible India, and I think it is the right time for us to position ourselves very differently, on the back of all the industrial and other development which has happened over the recent years, with the improvement in safety, security, and larger social infrastructure. I think it requires for all of us to put our thoughts together in trying to reinvent the entire brand India. So the key 4 aspects are from the voice of industry. Of course, we've got a larger, a plethora of suggestions which we came out, but the top 4 things that we think are going to be very critical for us to move forward is going to be first a formation of a National Tourism Council, and it is going to help converge multiple ministries, states, center, the industry to actually come together and share their thoughts and share the ideas and make it more and more competitive for India as we move forward towards attracting more international tourists. From current industry status, unfortunately, some states have given industry status to hospitality and tourism. Some states haven't. If that happens across the states, that just helps the industry plan much better. Ease of doing business, some states have moved forward where there were more than 70 licenses required to operate even a restaurant. Now they've been brought down. Maharashtra is one example where this has been done. So ease of doing business for hospitality becomes a key, very, very key aspect moving forward. And of course, export status to the tourism industry will help incentivize the entire industry to double the India share in as far as inbound tourism is concerned. So based on the discussion with faith members that we had before the entire event took place and the industry sessions that we've all attended, we believe that we can chart the way forward. And these are the 6 key areas that we think are going to be key as we move forward. So MICE is going to be a key aspect: adventure tourism, heritage and culture, cruise tourism, medical tourism, eco and rural tourism. So we'll start with MICE. And, we did a global comparison to actually figure out where do we stand as far as MICE is concerned. So amongst the BRICS, of course, China leads the pack by being number 7 globally, followed by Brazil and India at number 20 and 28 respectively. United States, of course, ranks number 1, and then you've got Germany and France, which makes this kind of sense that it does because of the industrial development that is there. India also ranks number 7 in APAC, and we are way behind countries like Japan, Australia, Korea, and Taiwan, and we're very close to Thailand, which gives you an idea that a lot of people, because Thailand again is a destination which is very competitive to us. So with that gives us an idea that there is a lot of potential in this entire market, and even within the APAC, we can attract much more MICE. Again, getting the voice of leadership, I think the Honorable Minister for Tourism and Culture has himself said that it has multi-sectoral impact, and they can help elevate the image of a destination. So he also is cognizant, and he said that it may take some time to revive, but we have to be prepared today on how can we have these events. Like we're having this event virtually. How can we have more and more physical events as we move forward? And we have to have all the preparations ready, utilizing this lean time to actually, make the infrastructure and make the program and make the destinations attractive enough for us to be one of the leaders in MICE, starting with APAC and then going across the globe. When he talks about the India scenario, in terms of MICE, we see that, the NCR is the key driver of MICE, followed very closely by Jaipur, Agra, and Mumbai. Also Goa and other destinations, which are very, very key as far as the entire Indian landscape is concerned. The MIC part of the MICE contributes about 60% of the total market size. And of 65% of all of these events are B2B events. So we also have a very strong outbound market, which is for MICE, which also gives us an idea that, the entire MICE landscape, which is expected to touch about 45 billion by 2025, which is going out of India, can be attracted to be in India. And these are all luxury or high-end MICE events which are happening outbound. So both from an international perspective, where we're getting MICE in India, and from a domestic perspective, I think we're primed to be a key MICE destination as we move forward. Again, from a MICE perspective, unfortunately, in the context of timelines of recovery, I think MICE is unfortunately going to be one of the last things that recover. And it was even in the post-2008 crisis, international arrivals recovered in 2 years. So we have to look at MICE from a domestic perspective, retain whatever outbound MICE was going, and it's a great time because people also cannot travel abroad. So can we figure out how do we keep these people here? Global MICE bidding fund of about 500 crores can be one of the key aspects that can help improve India's competitiveness of MICE across the board. We also may need to create a sub brand under India for MICE. That's some food for thought that the industry has thrown up. And we may need to create this brand to make MICE as a specific sector more attractive and more recognizable from a global market perspective. And finally, a national nodal body for MICE would, of course, help drive this entire conversation around MICE and figure out what is it that we are lacking as far as our competition is concerned. Next, we come to adventure tourism. Now, I know as far as adventure tourism is concerned, India, even though we do have a very, very high propensity towards adventure tourism, but unfortunately, it's something which is very, very underexplored for all of us. So when we talk about adventure tourism, mostly it's not something that Indians per se have experienced or are going to be looking to experience. But if you look at it globally, about 30% of all global expenditure in tourism is happening towards adventure tourism. And we do believe that adventure tourism is going to be a key driver for growth in India. It is going to be one of those products that we can develop and we can create a distinction from the world. And the reason why I say that is because we need to understand how exactly does adventure tourism work. Because of our lack of understanding within India, adventure tourism, I believe, hasn't taken up as strongly as it should. So adventure tourism essentially requires the promotion of destination or an activity. There has to be a local support and a cultural experience, which is very, very site and destination specific. And of course, safety and security, both perceived and actual. And when I say perceived, it is also important for us to understand that, skydiving service in New Zealand is perceived to be safer than a skydiving service in India, even though if they're being run by the same organization. I personally faced this challenge, when we were trying to get skydiving services introduced in Goa, and a lot of resistance was there from both locals and from the authorities on the safety and security norms of it. So from a both perceived point of view and actual safety of activities and sustainable practices, it is very, very important for us to bring these three things together for a successful adventure destinations. So we've also tried to list out the 10 pillars of this adventure tourism marketing competitiveness. And basically, they all talk about sustainability, safety, and security. What are the natural resources that you have? Adventure, entrepreneurship, local participation becomes a key aspect as far as adventure tourism is concerned. What are the resources that we have that we can leverage for adventure tourism? Infrastructure, because most of these sites you will have to understand will not be your urban destination, right? So you need to have infrastructure, you need to have an image created, which is going to be very, very conducive as far as the entire adventure tourism piece is concerned. Now, giving an overview of how adventure tourism has panned out in India, you would see that most of this map is gray. And most of this map is gray, unfortunately, not for the want of availability of adventure tourism projects and products, but because of the fact that we've not really as a country explored the entire potential of adventure tourism. To give you an idea, 70% of Himalayas reside within the country, right? 7,000 kilometers of coastline provides us with ample of opportunity to do various, marine-based adventure tourism activities. We're one of the very few countries, in fact, there are only 3 countries in the world which have both a hot and a cold desert within its boundaries. We rank about number 10 in terms of forest coverage, and we are number 6 in terms of recognized UNESCO World Natural Heritage Sites. So there is a huge amount of potential which exists within India. And, unfortunately, we've slipped to 96th position as far as Adventure Tourism Development Index is concerned. India ranks much lower than Bhutan, which is 14, and Nepal, which is 67. So we need to figure out, how do we develop this adventure tourism activity across India, and how do we market it better? So the way forward that we think is going to help in developing adventure tourism is, first of all, that ministry has taken a proactive approach in identifying adventure tourism as a niche tourism product. And it is required, according to the ministry also, to promote India as a 365-day destination, and attract tourists which have a specific interest in a specific kind of activity of adventure tourism. There are strategic guidance and status as a sub brand again, which we need to develop, where people associate a certain kind of adventure, a certain kind of image with Incredible India's adventure brand. There is, of course, financial support which is required. I am very well aware that the Ministry of Tourism has been doing a lot of CFA to various state governments and UTs for developing of ecotourism and other infrastructure which is related to adventure tourism. So that is something that we've already started seeing as we've gone forward in the past couple of years. Also, mapping of destinations. I'm sure most of you would have heard of Oli and other skiing destinations which exist in India. But the entire thought process of skiing being only a sport which is there in the in central and Eastern Europe is something that we need to get out of, and we need to attract more of that tourist in India. Can we actually do that? Is it environmentally sustainable? Can we have multiple treks across the Himalayas while ensuring that the sustainability of such treks are maintained? So these are some of the things that we need to think about as we move forward as far as adventure tourism is concerned. Of course, standardization and safety standards. There is already a lot of work which has happened. Adventure Tourism Association of India has also given out a regulatory framework, a broad framework of how adventure sports should be run in each of the states. So taking that forward and making that into a larger policy will help us standardize and give people that perceived safety net, which I think is preventing a lot of people from exploring adventure sports. Apart from that, of course, policy enablers like improving connectivity, PPP in ecotourism, collaboration and standardization, responsible tourism development, skill development, especially for the local populace, which is affected by such kind of activities, and creation of safe adventure tourism destinations, regulating them so that the entire industry doesn't get a bad name, are some of the key aspects that we realized as a way forward when we were discussing adventure tourism. Coming to cruise tourism, something which is very close to my heart. Globally, we are not a nation which is unfortunately considered as seafarers. And I always tell people to go back to history and look at entire Southeast Asia, where you have cultural remnants of Indians across Southeast Asia. And the only way that could have been done is if we have been seafaring people. So that is a misnomer that we need to change. And unfortunately, what's happened is that even though globally the numbers have been increasing rapidly, within India, we've seen very, very limited growth. And largely the growth has been very, very outbound driven. There is a huge growth of outbound tourists as far as cruise tourism is concerned, but number of ships making port to India is still very limited. And we think that going forward, especially in a post-pandemic era, when things get normal and people can again converge in large quantities on a limited space, cruise tourism is going to be a key aspect of growth. Now, the India scenario has been already, the potential has already been mapped as part of the Maritime Vision 2030, which is in draft stage. In fact, a lot of people who were part of our discussions in the Leadership Conclave are part of that entire guiding committee, which is looking at how can we develop India as a major cruise destination. So the idea is to increase the number of passengers from 0.2 million in 2016 to about 4 million in 2041, and raising the employment potential, everything else being there, from about 5,000 people to about 250,000 people by 2041. And leveraging the 7,500 kilometer coastline that we have across various states, where every destination, that every port, and we've mapped out all the ports that you can see on your slide. Every port that you would make your call on would be very different from the last port that you made call on. And that's the beauty of India, the diversity that we have. It becomes an entire cruise destination by itself. If you traverse that entire 7,500 kilometers, I think that makes it an entire itinerary by itself. So these are the kind of things that we need to look at when we move forward, especially with cruise tourism. There are also a huge amount of work which is happening on inland waterways. And that brings us to river cruises, which also becomes a very, very key aspect as we move forward. Because from a domestic standpoint, also, given the fact, and I would like to take you back to my initial slides, stating that our buffer has always been domestic tourism. And we are, of course, the second largest market globally as far as tourism is concerned. So, given those facts, I think it becomes very, very important for us to explore our internal waterways and explore river cruises as well. And the Ministry of Shipping has been doing a great job in identifying inland waterways. And I think moving forward, that can be a game changer for river cruises also, as far as that is concerned. On the way forward, the industry requires reforms, and we've been working on this for the past 5 to 7 years. There are cabotage laws which need to be relaxed because foreign cruises, when they come to Indian waters, there are a lot of myriad regulation which needs to be simplified. Custom laws and regulation on the port. We've had, unfortunately, instances where it has taken almost 18 to 24 hours for people to get their custom clearances once they've reached the port. And that just gives the international cruise operators a very, very different picture from what actually is what we want to present to them. Liberalization of entertainment and gambling laws, especially within our domestic waters, can be something which the industry expects. Capital subsidy for open sea and ocean cruises, relaxation of visa regulations again becomes a key aspect. Also, to retain the outbound leisure sector, as I mentioned earlier, a lot of our Indians are traveling abroad, going to Southeast Asia, going to Singapore to experience cruise. And how can we retain that? For us to become competitive, one of the key aspects that the industry believes is tax incentivization and GST restructuring. Marketing and promotion, again, probably hosting a regional cooperation meeting, having an international cruise conference here in India is going to help us promote cruise tourism and bring India on the cruise map. Unfortunately for us, even though most cruise vessels originating from Middle East come very close to India, but do not make a port call in India. In fact, they're now going to Sri Lanka as well. So how do we change that is something that we need to really think about, and probably a marketing and promotion campaign structured in a manner to attract more cruise tourism to India is what is warranted. And why can't we use India as a cruise destination and as a cruise tourism hub? Singapore has been able to do it very successfully over the years. Malaysia has been able to do it. What is stopping India from doing it? I think we have the potential, given the fact that we also have the entrepreneurs who've worked very hard in this industry. A PPP kind of approach towards development of cruise tourism in India may yield excellent results. And also the fact of one of the key unique aspects that we got, something that we had also not thought of when we were discussing cruise tourism from a policy perspective, was taking an entire ecosystem. When you have a ship which lands at any port, and you have 2,000, 2,500 people disembarking, you need to create an ecosystem for cruise to be successful. You can't really just have a port and believe that cruise tourism is going to take off. So you need to look at a destination holistically as far as cruise is concerned and create an entire ecosystem around it. We then come to rural and ecotourism, and of course, India is a destination which is very, very popular as far as rural tourism is concerned. So it is not a product which we are discovering only now. We've always had, and Rajasthan was one of the first states to start selling its rural culture abroad along with its heritage, and that has taken off very, very well. The differential that we want to bring about here is that there is a unique tourism product that can be offered from each of the regions. So we can pick up a region and the rural aspect of that region is going to be very different. Again, leveraging the diversity that India has to actually promote rural and ecotourism. The other thing that it does is there are local entrepreneurs. It is the actual grassroots tourism, grassroots economy and trickle down economy are buzzwords right now post pandemic. And I think this is one of the key aspects that we need to leverage as an industry because it is actually happening at the grassroots level. It also brings in synergies to multiple sectors for the simple fact that if you have, say, foreign tourists visiting a village in Uttar Pradesh or in Uttarakhand or in Madhya Pradesh, you would have to have at least basic communication facilities, electricity, and so on and so forth for those people to have a normal experience of visiting the countryside. So for us to do that, it also brings in other economic activities to that area. Finally, sensitization, we have seen, and this becomes again a key aspect, we have seen that rural tourism has not taken off because we've not really been able to convince the people living in villages that it is for their benefit. And that is where I think a community driven approach becomes more and more important for us, where we convince people that how is it going to be benefiting the local economy and the local entrepreneurs. Again, leadership voice from Secretary General of UNWTO. Globally, as I have mentioned also, poverty is very predominantly rural, and any rural tourism development brings the benefit at the actual grassroots, and it brings benefit to the actual beneficiaries on the ground. The case study on rural tourism, we looked at Malaysia, and Malaysia has offered a unique experience of lifestyle in the rural hospitality. And they've received the ULASIS award in 2012, and they saw an about 18% year-on-year revenue increase. These are, of course, 2012 figures. There was also a boost in household income because everybody becomes related to the tourism activity that's happening within their village. Of course, Kerala tourism is a global winner in the responsible tourism category. We've seen Kumarakam do wonders over the years. And the entire reason behind that has been that the entire village life experience was brought together as a community. So it was a community driven initiative which brought about the unique culture of Kerala, which brought about the unique community platform of Kerala, exploring the backwaters, leveraging them to take tourists to far-flung destinations, plantations, has already made Kerala a very, very good model for any other state to follow. So I think when we have the globally, most recognized responsible tourism product in India, we are the ones who should be replicating it much more quickly. So the way forward on this is that a national outreach program to create awareness amongst tourists is very, very important about the benefits of rural tourism. We can also do crowdsourcing, and social media is something, which I believe the power of social media is brilliant. It can bring forth, I'm sure all of you have been hearing this potty thing, which has become very, very popular. So something like that automatically resonates with millions of people in one go. And I believe that, responsible tourism and ecotourism and rural tourism is one thing where the social media and social media influencers can play a huge amount of part. We also thought of, and the industry also echoed our thought process of getting responsible tourism ambassadors. Ideally, people who have a lot of, again, social media presence and who are also themselves dedicatedly looking at ecotourism or looking at the ecology as a whole. That I think is going to bring a lot of people on board as far as the rural and ecotourism bandwagon is concerned. Social media campaigns and thematic drives, as I've already discussed, this is going to help us build a narrative around this entire segment. And finally, targeted multimedia campaigns, because as we move forward, AR, VR is going to become more and more critical for people to make their purchase decision before they travel, especially because it is going to be the risk return ratio post COVID has become very, very critical. Now, earlier I would just pick up my car and, if a friend of mine told me that you have to drive about 250 kilometers and there's a very good village dhaba that you can go and dine at, since I come from North India. So I would have done that. But now the risk return ratio with COVID, I would think twice before stepping out of my house. So a targeted multimedia campaign and leveraging AR and VR, especially on things like rural and ecotourism, can do wonders because people can experience it themselves, and that is going to help them make that purchase decision much more quickly. Of course, UN Sustainability Development Goals also reach out to the entire and tie in very beautifully with the rural and ecotourism ecosystem. And with this, I come to almost the end of, I think this is the last slide, if I remember correctly. So tourism is, of course, defined by movement. We cannot waste this chance by standing idle. And of course, the entire world came to a standstill because of COVID. But I think this can be the beginning and the best time for a reset of India's position as far as tourism is concerned. This brings us to an opportunity where everybody is at a level playing field. Having been worked in this industry for about 10 odd years, I've always heard Europe has such a big leg over us, and the destinations like France, Germany have had such a long time to develop, and they've all established destinations and so on and so forth. Well, God has given us all an opportunity. I am an optimist at heart, and I always believe that this is an opportunity for us to utilize this entire COVID scenario for a reset, because everybody has come back to ground zero. We start today, and if we come together and some of these way forward points across these specific industries and segments, if we look at them and take them forward, I think going forward, India can be, if not the market leader, at least be one of the top 2-3 destinations in the world. With that, I come to the end of my presentation. Thank you so much for giving me a patient hearing. Ashish, over to you.
Alap, thank you. Thank you for summarizing the recommendations and articulating them so well. We have been very fortunate to have people across the country and across the world joining us and sharing many points. And those points, over 80 to 100 speakers, are enormous. And over the next few days, we will be putting them together and working with the government and taking them forward. In addition to what Alap from KPMG mentioned, there are some of the additional things that have to be addressed and will be addressed, and there are some learnings which need to be incorporated. A very key thing is that we have India is a country of infinite experiences, and we need to create new domestic experiences. That has to be the biggest imperative. We have to create a very integrated airport management experience, international to domestic, the whole transit experience. That has to be, while we have great airports, our overall inter and intra airport experience has to be enhanced. Health protocols have to be harmonized, and unless those health protocols are harmonized, we will not be able to retain the solid domestic movement that we are looking at, and which is very critical to also ensure that when we open up internationally, that we need to have that confidence going through harmonized health protocol management. Digital passports are something that have to be worked upon in addition to probably the vaccine passports. And the faster we do it, the better we are in attracting more and more new kinds of clientele who are looking at safe and assured destinations. India is one of the youngest countries demographically, and we need to ensure that we tap into our demographics and create for them products which are infinite products suited to those demographics. We need people to stay in India because for tourism, because they want to stay in India, not because they have to due to the COVID crisis, not because they are not able to travel internationally. So our demographics have to be tapped, and new experiences have to be created around them. Almost every entity has undergone a massive shock to their balance sheet and P&L. And while they are asset intensive, then there are those who are experience intensive, those who are people intensive. But a very common learning, something that has to be sustained, is that this is the new baseline. And if it hasn't already been done, everybody has to work to ensure that their fixed cost structure is variabilized even more. and more so, they need to ensure that they, as they go in for restarting and recreating their P&Ls, their fixed cost structures, fixed cost profile needs to come down. How do you do that? All the tourism entities need to ensure that they create new brand designs. They need to create their new service designs, which will ensure that while they're not compromising with the kind of service profile that they're giving, the cost profile comes down till the time the revenues become more stable. It's very critical to ensure that uh, uh, tourism entities within the country try and develop points of synergies. This is a time when everyone has to work together to create more markets and create more businesses. So more and more synergies have to be created within verticals across the country, within the states, to ensure that each of them bring forward their specialities and their segmentation and work towards creating a bigger whole, and therefore work towards creating and restarting the market. Digitization, it has been enforced, has come forward very rapidly because of COVID, but it's time to embrace it wholeheartedly, and this is here to stay. So tourism enterprises have to ensure that their digitization content, be it in terms of the interaction with the customers, be it in terms of their training levels, be it in terms of the staff, overall the digitization content needs to go up extremely high, and one doesn't have to believe that because of COVID our digitization was high. This is something that has to be embraced wholeheartedly, so that this is an opportunity for even old age enterprises in tourism to become digitally native, and that is one thing which will ensure that the new tourism enterprises get created out of the ones which are still existing, because they have embraced digitization proactively and critically. We have to organize industry. There is no doubt about it. We have to, and that is even more critical as both domestic travelers who will want to stay back within India and international travelers who want to come to India. We need to have a very strong organization drive across all the verticals, across the states, and we will work very closely with authorities to ensure that more and more industries organize more, and they generate a level of confidence. There are no uh, unwanted practices which are taking place, and without ensuring that there is some kind of a legislative or a industry Raj kind of a situation, there has to be a process where people are recognized, and unrecognized elements go away. Heritage is India's wealth, and it has to become our national responsibility. We have to work even more to monetize our years of assets, and the whole PPP profile of heritage needs to go up within the country, and there needs to be a very sustained incentive drive to either fiscal or tax driven from central and state authorities to ensure that we are able to monetize all of our cultural heritage experiences before they become forgotten. uh, KPMG and rightly has mentioned in the report, and Lab articulated so well. Rural tourism is a very big differentiator, and we need to have that village vision for us going. How we need to create centers of excellence. We need to ensure that the villages are empowered and they want to, as he rightly mentioned, there needs to be a community buy-in to say that yes, I will become a model village for tourism, and that's something that India's both for domestic tourism as well as for creating very thematic differentiation for Indian tourism. That is something that needs to come in very, very strongly. There are niches in India which need to be worked upon, and film tourism is one such niche. And India was on the first movers in film tourism globally, but for some reason, I think. We were not able to capitalize upon that. We need to bring that drive back. We need to ensure that we have standardized protocols. We have center state coordination to bring the best of the movies within the country, because of the very fact that we have diversity which can capture any kind of a filming environment. But our enabling environment needs to ensure that film tourism becomes a sustained segmentation that we need to look at. We were talking about cuisine, and cuisine. India is a land of cuisine changing hands every 100 kilometers, but we haven't leveraged it. We know tandoori chicken, we know roti, we know naan globally. Those have become products, but India in itself has the potential to become a complete cuisine destination, and for that, regional and state cuisines need to become branded and need to be leveraged upon globally. and that is something that needs to be worked upon. On cruises, as Alap rightly mentioned, there's so much happening, and there is so much more which has to happen. And one of the key things for that is the fact that in cruise, there are two key strategies that also have to be worked upon. Three, actually. India is among with the is India is in a very strong profile of landlocked countries. We need to become a hub and spoke model for them. We need to use our coastlines to reach out to them. And similarly, so for each state, as happened in Maharashtra recently, where they use cruise to reach out to their own beaches within, we need to use our coastlines, and states within themselves need to create hub centers which can reach out and leverage all of their beach and coastlines through regional and state level cruise mechanism. We need to create a land to sea, a sea to land strategy, and vice versa, a sea to land to river strategy, for example. And that level of integration, that level of harmonization of the of infrastructure needs to happen, and that's one of the very big drivers, a new high-end tourism which India needs to have. We need to also look at the fact that there are people who have parked cruises in our neighborhood countries. We need to target these cruises. I mean, just in Dubai, we understand that there are 1,000 high rollers who are there. We need to target those cruises. Why don't they come to India? Come down, sail down for that matter, and leverage India's beauty and go back. And those are some of the key strategies we need to work on cruises. On MICE, as it's amazing, the fact that India is I think the fourth largest PPP by GDP. Our MICE share is so low, despite the fact that we are industry leaders in economy in many sectors. MICE is an opportunity where high value tourism is leveraging India's natural and cultural heritage. And that's and apart from all the strategies which have been shared just now, we need to look at the fact that we need to be tracking MICE very carefully. We need to have a MICE tracker to ensure that we are not losing out. We need to ensure that we have a grid of national of city bureaus where all of them work together. It's not, MICE doesn't come by itself. We need to bid for it proactively and ensure that the center, the state, the local authorities, and the local whole elements work together to make the cities, make the destinations, and therefore make the country a national MICE, a national MICE, give that national MICE advantage. India is a it's amazing. I have these so many aspects that I want to share, and I think India is a land of infinite experiences, and we need each of those experiences to be highlighted, branded, prioritized, leveraged. And the biggest thing that we need to capture is that the domestic tourist that we are leveraging, that domestic tourist needs to be retained, and that's the bigger story there. The moment the borders open up, the domestic tourists who are high value will start looking at international destinations. We need to move fast. We need to move now. We need to move very aggressively to ensure that we create India as a land of infinite experiences at the city level, at the state level, at the central level, and create those new value products for our own domestic tourists who are high value, middle value to spend, and not create a sense of complacency that while we are the second largest domestic tourist by DTV, and for some reason we don't know the value, but I'm quite sure that by value we are quite low in the pecking order. So we need to ensure that we need to first become attractive for our domestic market, and we need to make people stay in India, believe in India, and while they should travel out, and they will, we should also give them that equal amount of excitement and opportunity that as and when, even when borders open, they would want to say, yes, I want to go through all of these experiences. And the stronger we become in tourism in India, the stronger we will become in tourism internationally. Finally, two key points at the enterprise level. It's a very, very difficult situation. So I think everybody has got assets, and it's very important for all tourism enterprises to identify the assets that they have, leverage those assets, try and monetize them wherever they can, because most of the segments have not yet had a revenue profile coming in. But at this moment in time, try and redesign the service experience and their asset profile to see what are the assets that can be leveraged in whichever form to increase their value. And finally, it's I think the three things that every tourism enterprise which is emerged has to look at is, should they try and specialize, should they try and segment, or should they enhance their scope and become size based. I think these three priorities have to be very clearly focused on by each tourism enterprise, and we will work very closely with all associations will work closely with all the members, and we all together work closely with the relevant authorities to ensure that, to at least try and build this voice forward, try and build on this huge energy and momentum that we have captured in the past 3 days through hundreds to what almost 100 odd national, international, the top of the line voices, uh, and ensure that at least the dialogue doesn't get forgotten away. There are winnings that need to be picked, and we need to start moving forward. Uh, with that, I think it's with a uh, while this is the end of this journey with the leadership panels, and I think it's the beginning of a very very long journey that we all have to take together. And so we sign off on the leadership panel discussions from India, from Federation of Associations of Indian Tourism and Hospitality, the body of 10 associations, on behalf of the ministry, on behalf of all the people who have worked relentlessly. This is Ashish Gupta, Consulting CEO of Faith, signing off. Namaste. Thank you very much. God bless you. Thank you, Alap, and we look forward to welcoming you in India soon, if not later. Namaste. Thank you very much. Thank you, Alap.